A while back, we explored the legends of the Nunehi, strange beings from the Cherokee folklore, different from both human and gods. The presentation we offered tied in the stories of the Nunehi with the legends of the Tuatha De Danann, a supernatural race of beings from Celtic mythology. The similarities between the two were astonishing, and several conversations took place within the comments section as to the possibilities as to why. Many people pointed out the fact that the Appalachian Mountains, where the legends of the Nunehi originate, were once part of the British Isles themselves, the ancient mountain range still continuing through the ocean depths today to the hills of Ireland and Scotland. In that earlier presentation, we talked about how the Scot-Irish settlers got along so well with the Creek and Cherokee tribes they encountered within the Appalachian Hills, mostly because of the similarities between the native beliefs and the pagan practices the new settlers brought with them. In my original intro for that video, I stated that when the Irish and Scottish settlers arrived in the Appalachian Mountains, the Tuatha De Danann were already there. Why do I bring all this up again? Well, I've found some new information with my research. New information that may cement that theory, at least in my mind. South Carolina gives us the ancient tribe of Duhare. Native and Spanish explorers both describe them the same, possessing iron tools, domesticating and herding deer, and noticeably taller than the other natives in the area. Oh, and they were Caucasian, described as pale, having freckles, gray eyes, and hair that was red and brown. They spread out within the area that the Irish and Scottish settlers later fell in love with. Could this be why? Does this explain the similarities in the beliefs of Appalachian natives and settlers hundreds of years later? Let's see what all we can find. Everyone loves a good, strange, weird, or bizarre story. Well, welcome to the American South, where dark legends and haunted history lurk around every corner. Where superstition, folklore, and a touch of backwoods magic blend with everyday culture. Some say, in order to survive. This is Dixie After Dark. In the 1500s, Spanish explorer Captain Francisco Gordillo set out from his settlement in Hispaniola in the Caribbean, ordered to make his way north. The goal was to explore and map out the coastline of what is now known as Georgia, South Carolina, North Carolina, and Virginia. Along the way, he met up with the Spanish slave trailer Pedro de Cuello. The two teamed up and continued their travels northwards, and in 1521, they arrived in what would later become known as South Carolina. There, Gordillo records meeting several different tribes, but one stood out from the rest, one that called themselves the Duhare tribe. He describes the tribe as Caucasian, standing at least a foot taller than the other natives in the area. As shocking as this discovery was, there were other big differences that Gordillo outlines. The Duhare people were the only tribe they encountered that had the possession of iron tools, a technology that didn't exist yet within the Native American culture. Natives did have access to iron, but not the knowledge of the smelting process needed to shape it. Outside of the Duhare tribe, iron was mostly used as decoration, simply polished in its raw state. The first dated iron tools in America other than the Duhare tribe is 100 years later, in the Pacific Northwest, where iron tools and other implements were scavenged by the Chinookan tribes from wrecked Japanese and Chinese ships along the coast. It isn't believed that the Duhare crafted their own tools, though, as the nearest iron deposits were 280 miles inland from the shore. The most common theory is that the tools witnessed by the Spanish were those remaining from the original people that traveled from Europe and passed down through their descendants. The Duhare tribe also demonstrated an early understanding of gunpowder, perhaps, as they are recorded as having some sort of pyrotechnic devices, mostly described to make me think of sparklers or small rockets. Another distinctive difference is that the Duhare tribe used a calendar of sorts, dividing their year into 12 moons, whereas other tribes seem to divide the year into 4 seasons. The other tribes that did use a lunar system seem to all use a 13-month system. The Duhare people also had domesticated deer. There were large corrals built to house the deer at night. During the day, the deer were released to roam the forest, with herders keeping them in check. They even used herding dogs, much like the European did with cattle. They even fattened up some of the excess male deer with corn to be butchered later. On top of this, records show that the Duhare even milked their deer and made cheese from the milk. As impossible as this sounds, it's important to note that Gaelic tribes in Ireland and Scotland had domesticated deer well before cattle was ever introduced to the Isles, and the deer milk in particular has been mentioned and honored in early Gaelic poetry. The Duhare also raised ducks, chicken, and geese, as well as farmed their own corn, grain, potatoes, and other vegetables. The accounts of the Spanish explorers go on to say that the Duhare tribe was led by a chief named Duhare. Duhare was said to have been of gigantic size, with a wife as large as he was and 5 children. The chief was said to have been decorated with bright blue paint or tattoos, very reminiscent of the Picts of ancient lands of Scotland. The word Pict translates from Latin to mean painted. Similarly, the chief of the Duhare, Duhare, translates from medieval English Gaelic to mean painted. Duhare and his wife were said to live in a large stone structure, while the rest of the Duhare lived in houses and huts similar to the ones used by the surrounding natives. Instead of horses, Duhare was carried on the shoulders of young, strong warriors. All of this, of course, would rely on the idea that the early Scottish and Irish tribes traveled all the way to the Americas. We do know of one early European tribe that made that same trip multiple times, and is commonly accepted by academics now as having been here long before Christopher Columbus got lost and discovered America by accident: the Vikings. There isn't a lot of difference between the ancient Vikings and Picts or Celts in their beliefs or ways of life. In fact, the Vikings often describe the Irish as able seafarers. There are accounts of the Irish making their way as far west as Iceland in the 10th century. The Vikings also have claims of Irish encampments south of the Chesapeake Bay, putting them at least in the southern regions of Virginia during the age of the Vikings' travels. The Vikings called the area of the Irish encampments, this word, meaning land of the white men. There are several historical academics and sources that claim the Irish were the first white men to come to America, but there are just as many that disagree. An early 1922 Smithsonian Institute publication does reference early Spanish accounts of the Duhare people, although it does begin with a preface that it could not be true. Academics that support the early Irish coming to the Americas first point out that the initial accounts given to us by the Spanish seemed absurd to early scholars because not much was known about the Irish history at the time. Even as more came to light about the early Irish cultures over the centuries, the stories of the Duhare were largely ignored. That is, until 1983. Dr. Barry Fell, a professor at Harvard University, said he found early writings etched into rocks in West Virginia. He believed that these carvings were written in Ogham, an early Irish script used between the 6th and 8th centuries. Based on his translations, Dr. Fell believed the inscriptions told the story of the birth of Christ. Dr. Fell believed that St. Brendan of Clonfert made it to the Americas between the years 512 and 530. St. Brendan of Clonfert was one of the 12 Apostles of Ireland, a group of early Christian monastics. St. Brendan is also known as Brendan the Navigator or Brendan the Voyager, as he's known for his legendary voyages into the Atlantic Ocean in search of the Isle of the Blessed or the Garden of Eden. The St. Brendan Society today celebrates the belief that St. Brendan was the first European to reach North America in the 6th century. In 1978, British writer and historian Timothy Severin showed that it was possible. In the film called The Brendan Voyage, Severin and a team of adventurers constructed a historically accurate leather-clad boat and successfully made the trip across the Atlantic from the British Isles all the way to North America. Early maps from Christopher Columbus's time even has an island way out in the western Atlantic, labeled as St. Brendan's Island. In 2006, a nationwide team of Native Americans called People of One Fire began a research project to compile everything that could be found on North America's pre-European history. Part of this work was to translate every single Native American word that was found in colonial documents, including those from Spanish explorers. Most were easily translated from various native tongues, but those in reference to the Duhare did not match any of the native languages compiled by People of One Fire. It wasn't until 2011 that a viable translation was found, using Gaelic dictionaries. References to the Duhare then started to add up. Apart from single-word references, the largest compilation of writings equated to the Duhare are from rock carvings in South Carolina. After being translated using the Gaelic language, the inscription reads, "On milk of deer I was reared, on milk of deer I was nurtured, on milk of deer beneath the ridge of storms, on crest of hill and mountain." This verse is from a medieval lullaby known to have been popular in Ireland in early centuries. As a matter of fact, it was in using Gaelic for these translations that the team first encountered the word Duhare outside of native accounts of the Spanish. In Gaelic, Duhare can be translated two ways. One meaning is place of the clan Hare. The other meaning is place of the Irish. Another stone found in Cherokee County, Georgia, now known as the Reichhardt boulder, has identical designs carved into it as similar-sized boulders along the western Irish coast in Count Carey, Ireland. The Duhare tribe of South Carolina may be the more well-documented of the tribes of Irish descent, but it's not the only one. The Mandan tribe of North and South Dakota told early French explorers that there were natives in the area that had fair skin with red or blonde hair and blue or gray eyes. The Paiute tribe in Nevada have tales of red-haired giants, and Midwestern tribes have stories of fair-skinned yellow or red-haired giants in the Great Lakes and southern Canadian regions. Red-haired mummies have even been found in Michigan, Illinois, New York, Virginia, Arizona, and Nevada. With the stories of the Irish being noticeably taller than Native Americans, it's possible that the native word giants referred to this. Of course, tales of giants in North America, a lot of times, tend to lean in a different direction. Many of those legends have a darker, more evil connotation, but that's a lot of information that probably deserves a separate presentation on its own. It's a subject I've been interested in for a long time now, so who knows? Maybe we'll dive into it here one day soon.